If you died and were suddenly reincarnated in a world where you'd be rewarded for hating rich people, or better, imagine yourself in a post-apocalyptic era where rich people treat commoners like shit and expect them to bow and obey their every command like a good bitch. Awesome, right? But only if you were rich. Well, in the case of the protagonist of this story, he had things go way worse for him before they became better. Born into a poor family of commoners in a post-apocalyptic world, our protagonist had to live a life of pain, suffering, and constant ridicule by these arrogant rich people. One day, the poor bastard died a brutal death, but was lucky enough to be granted a special ability to be reincarnated, just seconds before his end. 9 months later, in a VIP delivery room, our protagonist's new mom, who happens to be the rich wife of a dandy politician's son, chills out reading a male-only magazine while her midwives work painstakingly to get the little bastard trapped in her belly out. Several pushes later, the nonchalant rich bitch gives birth to boy, but when her father-in-law, old fart the Giga Chad, gets the news, he acts all uninterested like the proud rich MFer he is, and asks about his other son, Shiquan, who's also the newborn's father. Seconds after finding out that the baby's father, Shiquan, is busy rocking juicy melons in heaven on earth, Grandpa hears a scream from the delivery room and instantly rushes to check up on his newborn, not caring about his daughter-in-law. Getting to the delivery room, Big Daddy finds his newborn son wrapped in a shroud of yellow lightning and nearly dies of happiness, as he realizes that his clan has just given birth to a genius. What he didn't know at the time was that this newborn is the sole reincarnation of a lowly commoner that his stupid son, Shinquan, once killed on a whim. To even think that the dad's XY chromosome would end up introducing his arch-nemesis into his own family is just bad luck if you ask me. Well, for now, the baby, who has all the memories of his past and present life, keeps his happiness to himself because he needs them to spend their blood money on him first before enacting his revenge. However, before long, his C-grade lightning-type divine sense ability is activated, and Big Daddy nearly shits his pants in excitement. His grandson? Having the unparalleled innate divine sense at birth? That's freaking awesome! As Big Daddy plays with his newborn genius son, our protagonist smiles in anticipation because he knows that in a few years from that point, he'll definitely take the chance heaven has given him and take everything from the Liu clan. So he will make sure that they can never reincarnate ever again. For now, though, he lets his granddad rejoice and promise to raise him, his future arch-nemesis, using the Liu clan's resources so he can lead the clan to even greater heights or destroy it. Moments later, when Dad puts him down to continue his rest, our MC tells us about the best 6 months of his new and past life, shortly after he was killed by the Liu brat who disgraced him. As it turns out, just 1 month into his reincarnation, in his embryonic phase, his bitchy mom was served some unique high-quality vital essence infusion tonic medicine by a maid plump enough to make even a male toddler get stiff, and before long, our protagonist reaches the threshold of a D grade as an embryo. That's right. Before bro even knew he existed, he already started aura farming. How sick is that? Anyway, after getting to a level most commoners would never risk their lives to reach, our protagonist starts to wonder, what the hell does accelerated growth mean? Especially when there are no records of it in any of the Academy's ability classification teachings. With his questions left unanswered, our two-faced protagonist continued chilling in his mom's belly until he came across a problem. As it turns out, bro stole the spot of his mother's real embryo to force his reincarnation into the Liu clan's bloodline. So, by the time the mother's original embryo tries to regain its spot in her womb, our protagonist's embryo gobbled the little twerp up and acquired the inactive version of the lightning-type divine sense. With this new elemental power, our MC takes a zen pose in his mom's womb, anticipates his revenge, and continues living like a king. 3 months into his reincarnation, during his fetal phase, poor MC gets woken up one night by a constant to-and-fro movement from his mother's body. Looking down from his little house, he spots an unfamiliar schlong touching his legs from his mom's other hole and gets irritated. As if the irritating to-and-fro movements weren't bad enough, our protagonist also gets to hear the dialogue between his cheater mom and her boy toy. Apparently, the boy toy was scared that Shinquan would get revenge on them for gobbling each other up, but Mom assures the dude that her marriage to the foolish man is just a political one, and that he only needs her for her family's rare treasure elixir constitution to strengthen his seed. When the boy toy starts questioning the paternity of the seed inside Mom's belly, our protagonist gets even more irritated as the movements get even more chaotic. So what does he do? Well, our gigachad of an MC fries the cheater's schlong with a lightning zap and vaporizes it instantly. Yep, think about it. Around 6 months into his reincarnation, our protagonist, who's now well developed as a child, realizes that he's about to be born. However, hours before he puts his mom in labor, his father, Xingquan, visits their mom to see their baby, and MC, who didn't know Xingquan was his father because he stole the real embryo spot in their mother's belly, instantly recognizes him as the bastard who caused his death. Apparently, our protagonist's beef with Xingquan all began about a year ago, when Xingquan took our protagonist, as well as a few more commoners, to an area full of monsters, ignoring all the several warning signs on the way. Eventually, when they got to the area, Xingquan sacrificed both MC and his commoner buddies to the monsters there to fill their bellies, all just to form something he calls a spirit core. The last memory that our protagonist has of the narcissistic Nimrod is him cackling like a really bad Halloween project and trash-talking the poor guy for overestimating himself as a martial combat artist from the G family. As his life flashes before his eyes, MC recalls the last time he saw his 3 little sisters before coming on the mission, and he got very angry. Having remembered such a ghastly memory, our protagonist sucker punches his foolish father from his mother's belly, sending him crashing into a bunch of chairs and rebels right in his mother's belly. Once the commotion stops, his mother gets checked, and a nurse, upon checking his health, reports to his grandfather, Big Daddy, that he's about to be born. By this time, Bro knows he's cooked, so before leaving his paradise, MC does his best to absorb as much XP and aura as possible to get a surprise breakthrough. 1 month after our esteemed protagonist's birth, Big Daddy threw a boring rich people's banquet to celebrate his new genius grandson's birth. On D-Day, several members of the big families in the land brought various presents to celebrate our protagonist's 1-month birthday. Imagine being so rich that you casually hold a full party for your 1-month-old. Anyway, a few hours into the banquet, a familiar face approaches Big Daddy, Xingquan, and the mother on stage to congratulate them all for bringing such a wonderful grandson into the Liu clan. As he presents his gifts to Xingquan and his wife, the cheater, our protagonist, who's currently resting in the arms of a maid, instantly recognizes the wrinkle-faced bastard to be Brother Chen, the very person who caused his separation from his siblings, aka MC's direct enemy. Moments before enacting his revenge against the deep blood feud between them, MC takes us through yet another memory recap, so we all get to see how that old fool indirectly destroyed his life. On that fateful night, our poor protagonist was busy celebrating a special event with his 3 little sisters when suddenly Brother Chen's call came in. The moment MC picks up, Chen blasts the shit out of him for being late for the private job he had for him. Even when the protagonist tried apologizing, citing that something very important had come up, Brother Chen still shamed him because he knew that the protagonist needed the money from that job to buy a house. Thankfully, the protagonist keeps his cool throughout the entire call and ends it after promising to be there ASAP. Soon after hanging up, the protagonist apologizes to his little sisters in advance and rushes out of the house in the middle of the night to get on the odd job. A few hours later, after the protagonist and the first team of fighters were sent into a strange portal in a cave, Xingquan and his current wife arrived to greet the gatekeeper, Brother Chen, who they found at the entrance smoking a blunt. After the niceties, Xingquan asks Brother Chen about the progress of the suicide mission, and Chen tells him that the sacrificial lambs have been inside for a few hours, and not a single one of them has come out. Satisfied with the report, Xingquan slaps Chen in appreciation for always doing an efficient job and then proceeds to walk into the portal so he can satisfy his curvy wife's needs. While he ushers the lady into the portal, Xingquan's wife complains that the doofus is just raising a bastard for his family because they're that desperate to climb higher in rank. Ignoring his wife's insults, Xingquan smugly walks into the portal, alongside a bodyguard and Brother Chen, to check up on the warriors trapped on the other side. Upon trekking for the next 2 hours, one of the warriors they picked up on the way warns them not to go in that direction because there's an incredibly powerful beast in there, and that everyone walking there is dead. However, when Shinquan finds out that there's one survivor, he turns to Chen and lets him know that one can't get spirit medicine from the monsters without enough feed. While the brainless oaf, Chen, racks his head for a good explanation, Shinquan and his people finally arrive at the battlefield to find our brave protagonist looking like the top G, shirtless, and fighting the monster all alone. Seeing this, Shinquan does a spit take because he'd never envisaged that someone like the protagonist would even dare to face his beloved beast all alone, much less harm it. So, before our protagonist destroys Shinquan's beloved monster, Brother Chen calls the protagonist by his name, Ye Chen, and distracts him for a little while. Upon remembering his grudge against the wrinkly old man, our little Ye Chen intentionally spreads his tiny raccoon hands out to Brother Chen, and Shinquan, upon realizing that his young son wants Brother Chen to carry him, smugly urges the old fool to accept the greatest honor of his life. Without a single second to waste, Brother Chen happily does something nobody in his entire bloodline has ever done before. He carries the esteemed young genius master of the Liu clan, not knowing that our little bundle of bittersweet joy had something sinister planned for his stupid arse. The moment Brother Chen handles our little protagonist in his hands, the little devil zaps Brother Chen's arms with a slight jolt of lightning, and this causes the obnoxious dimwit to drop the young master right in front of every single VIP in the banquet. Seconds after this happens, the entire banquet halts to a pause for a minute or two, with musicians, Big Daddy, and party-goers all staring at the little guy on the floor, hoping bro's all right. Not too long after, our little devil bawls his baby eyes out in sorrow, and by this time, Brother Chen knows he's cooked because shortly after, Big Daddy, our protagonist's grandpa, crashes out and insults the living shit out of him. In an attempt to pacify the leader of his clan, Brother Chen instantly goes on all fours, like the animal that he is, slams his head into the floor, and tries to explain exactly what happened. Unfortunately for him, these rich bastards need someone to blame. So before Brother Chen even gets his explanation out, Shinquan kicks his face and calls him a dog. Knowing fully well that he's lost his chance for an explanation, Brother Chen gets back on all fours and starts begging the Liu family leaders to have mercy on him, all while claiming that he'd never dare to hurt the young master on purpose. Eventually, when the adult brat gets tired of Brother Chen's groveling, he orders his men to drag the fool out of the banquet and beat the shit out of him. At this point, Brother Chen just takes what he gets, and so he thanks Shinquan for the light punishment. Sadly, just as the old man's about to be dragged out of the ballroom, our protagonist, Ye Chen, gives the poor guy another evil, smug look and cries even louder to annoy his family members even more. Irritated, Big Daddy orders the maid holding the young master to take him inside and check if he's hurt, and the maid instantly springs into action. Thereafter, he turns to Brother Chen, insults his lineage, and tells Shinquan, while walking into the medical room, to dispose of Brother Chen as soon as possible, since he's proven himself to be quite useless to the clan. Having heard his dad's order, Shinquan breaks the wine glass in his hand, kicks the useless POS on the face yet again, and then orders the guards to not only drag Brother Chen out and beat him to death, but they should also ensure they feed him to the dogs. Shortly after getting the nuisance out of the ballroom, Shinquan turns to the guests and musicians, who've been watching and staying silent the entire time, and orders them to keep enjoying themselves. With this, the party continues like nothing happened, and everyone has a good time. In the meantime, our little protagonist, while getting his health checked in the other room, realizes that if he wants to grow up quickly, he needs to absorb more vital essence from his mother. In other words, he needs to suck his mom's double Ds till she nearly drops dead. So, once the family doctor clears him of any injuries from the incident, the baby protagonist remembers to find his past self's 3 little sisters before it's too late. To do that, however, he needs to grow much faster now, so he can start moving ASAP and get his plan in motion. That being said, the baby protagonist makes his cute baby sounds, almost as if he were calling for his mama's milk, and Grandpa, upon decoding the coos, instructs the maid to go call his daughter-in-law so she can nurse, eat more spirit medicine, and nurse him. Moments later, when Shinquan's wife arrives, she yaps around and complains about just feeding him not too long ago. Hearing this, Big Daddy encourages her to work hard like a horse for his and her clan's sakes, and the mother, left with no other choice, exposes her left boob so her son can suckle to his heart's content. As soon as the little guy pounces on the nipple, he drains the poor woman in less than a minute. However, before she gives up on feeding her child, Big Daddy orders more spirit tonic and ensures his daughter-in-law continues feeding Ye Chen until she becomes irritated with nursing her own child. 3 months later, after sucking his mom to a stupor, our young protagonist gets promoted from the C-rank elementary lightning element divine to the C-rank intermediate lightning element divine and immediately begins his rebellious toddler phase. One day, as he crawls away from a maid at super speed, our protagonist thinks about all the resources he spent an entire year buying during his broke-ass past life for advancement, as well as the points when he desperately fought in many low-level portal missions, facing countless danger and countless injuries, and realizes just how cooked he was back when he was grown and poor as shit. Now that he's advanced from C-rank elementary to intermediate just by drinking his mom's colostrum for 3 months. Ye Chen, our protagonist, plans on continuing his mission till he grows to a toddler the following year. So, shortly after escaping the maid's sight, little Ye Chen crawls into the dining room with both his parents and grandpa sitting and awaiting dinner and gives his mom a terrifying look. By this time, Big Daddy spots his grandson crawling near the table, so before the little twerp gets hurt, he calls the maid on duty, scolding her for not keeping a good eye on his grandson. And the plump maid, who arrives seconds later, explains that she just couldn't catch up with Ye Chen because he was too fast. Around this same time, the little Ye Chen's negative IQ father, Xinquan, trolls his wife by asking if she thinks her son wants milk again, but as the dread of being drained dry comes upon her, the poor thing freaks out pretty badly and orders the maid to take the little bastard away so she can catch a break for the first time in 3 months. Unable to waste any more time, little Ye Chen gets on his 2 feet, much to the surprise of Big Daddy and the others, and slowly walks towards his pathetic mother. Once he gets close enough, our absolute giga-chad of a protagonist latches his lips on his mother's juicy melons, ignoring her plea to let her get a proper meal, and sucks away. As for the Big Daddy, he praises his grandson for his heavenly constitution and heavy construction, and then decides that since little Ye Chen can already stand, then, according to the Liu family rules, they have no choice but to select a personal death servant for him. To do this, however, he visits the Liu family mansion's dungeon with his butler and asks him for the results of some tests they've been conducting with their prisoners. As the butler assures the man that they're only delaying to get the best of the best for his grandson, little Ye Chen, who's currently attached to his mother's plump melons, takes a sneak peek when he hears a crazy scream from one of the prisoners in the dungeon and, upon spotting the several rotting corpses of the young kids scattered around the ground, he also spots one of his younger sisters, the silver-haired one, taking a defensive position with barely any clothes on. To make matters worse, one of the messed-up feral ladies from the Liu clan was happily clawing her way to his sister's body, ready to slice her up for dinner. Thankfully, before the little protagonist can think, he subconsciously zaps the little biatch with a bolt of his yellow lightning and fries both her and his mother, who's apparently innocent. As soon as his sister realizes that she's free, she pounces on the crackly piece of bread left on the floor by her masters and chomps on it like a lion in heat. Right after unleashing the impressive lightning attack, little Ye Chen hopes with every fiber in his being that his family didn't notice anything suspicious with his little stunt earlier. Luckily for him, just seconds later, Grandpa Big Daddy bursts out in laughter, with Xinquan present, and then praises little Ye Chen's bravery before reminding Xinquan just how useless he was back when he was Ye Chen's age. At this point, the little protagonist discovers just how much power he has as a little kid. If anything, a child's identity is pretty useful because he won't need to come up with explanations to justify some of the weird things they do. After all, Big Daddy will always come up with reasons for him. With the battle over, the butler asks Grandpa what they should do, especially now that Ye Chen's interrupted the battle. But then Grandpa, who's hella satisfied with what he'd just seen, concludes that since the silver-haired kid's appearance is decent enough, then they can just take her back the main living space to wash her up and teach her the proper ways to treat her new master. A few hours later, after cleaning Ye Chen's sister and dressing her in maid clothes, Big Daddy's butler gives her the necessary instructions she needs to become the perfect death servant for the young master. As part of her duties, the silver-haired little girl is to protect the little rascal with her life, so that once he grows up, she'll also teach him how to become an adult of the Liu clan. Right before leaving, the butler also tells her to always go train at the martial arts hall anytime the young master is asleep, so she'll eventually become strong enough to become his bodyguard. With that being said, the rude bastard slams the door on the silver-haired girl, leaving her with the confused so-called young master so they can get acquainted with each other. Sadly, just seconds after the butler leaves, Ye Chen's sister, still in the maid's outfit, pulls out a military dagger, which strikes fear into little Ye Chen and makes a move to kill the little bastard before the others notice her true intentions. Realizing what's about to happen, the protagonist does his best to try to talk to his sister, but since his vocal cords aren't developed enough yet, he knows he needs to try something else. And fast. Before long, his sister raises her dagger, blames the little guy for killing her brother, and assures little Ye Chen that she's going to avenge her brother by killing him instead. By the time she brings down her hand to stab the rascal, Ye Chen surprisingly leaps out of his bed with impressive agility and zaps himself around the room to confuse his sister, so she'll eventually get tired and let him go. To his dismay, his sister activates her innate wind element divine sense ability, which comes as a shock to Ye Chen, and does her best to track the little Nimrod all around the room. So, while she chases the little guy all over, poor Ye Chen feels the insane fatigue effects of using divine sense martial training and lightning abilities simultaneously, as using both skills at the same time puts too much strain on his little body, and figures he needs to think of a solution to his problem as quickly as possible. Just then, he gets a very good idea and zaps his little sis with a low-output lightning shock to keep her down. Once the girl's down and incapacitated from the electrocution, our little protagonist punctures the tip of his right pointer finger with the girl's dagger, lets it bleed a little bit, and then writes some words on the floor so his sister can read and realize that he's actually her brother's reincarnation. As soon as the electrocution is over and the girl gets back on her feet, little Ye Chen extends his arms out, fully expecting her to read his message and rush in for a brotherly hug. Not too long after, the girl pulls out the dagger and continues attacking the little guy, just as he remembers that she can't read, and little Ye Chen gets back to defending himself from all her attacks. While he jumps all over, the little rascal knows he can't risk going out of the room, because the adults will kill his sister the moment they realize that she was trying to kill him. So, for now, he sticks to doing his best to stay alive until he comes up with another brilliant plan to talk some sense into his foolish sister. Meanwhile, Brother Chen, upon receiving his punishment for dropping the young master at the ball, walks up the family mansion towards little Ye Chen's room with a small gift box in his hands. As he strolls toward the toddler's entrance door, the poor schmuck remembers his last meeting with Xinquan, back when he advised that he make the angry Big Daddy happy to avoid incurring his wrath any further, and constantly reminds himself to do everything possible to make the little devil happy. Now that he's sold all his assets to buy the little gift box at the black market auction, Brother Chen sincerely hopes it's enough to pacify the young master and make him really happy. Before long, as he approaches Ye Chen's room, he hears and recognizes the young master's stressed voice and wonders what the hell's wrong with him. By the time he opens the entrance door to the room, Brother Chen spots little Ye Chen running all over the room with his maid sister pursuing him with a knife and recoils in shock and confusion. To stop the old fool from running his mouth, little Ye Chen comes up with an amazing plan to frame the fool and instantly gets right down to enacting it. To do this, he turns back, grabs his sister's right hand, zaps her unconscious with a jolt of lightning, causing her to drop the knife and then grabs the knife. Thereafter, he cuts his left tricep and throws the dagger toward Brother Chen, who's none the wiser. As soon as Brother Chen catches the assault weapon, dropping the gift box he got for Ye Chen, the little devil takes one deep, long breath and lets out a scream so loud that it wakes up the entire neighborhood. A few minutes later, when Big Daddy and the rest of the family get to little Ye Chen's room to figure out what's causing the commotion, they spot the brainless oaf, Brother Chen, holding a blood-stained dagger and pointing it dangerously toward an injured and crying Ye Chen and his new maid. Given Brother Chen's track record of always trying to harm the young master, Big Daddy and his son, Xinquan, instantly misunderstand the situation as they all think Brother Chen is trying to harm the young master. In a fit of rage, Big Daddy asks Brother Chen why he's in his grandson's room with a blood-stained blade. But then Chen, having finally realized the dire situation he's in, drops the dagger and tries to tell everyone that he didn't harm the young master. In the blink of an eye, Xinquan punches the shit out of the bastard and calls him out for trying to harm him, despite giving him a second chance to try and make things right. At this point, Brother Chen, knowing fully well that he's cooked, tells Xinquan and the others around the room that he only came by to deliver a gift to pacify the young master. However, when he got to the entrance door, he claims to have seen the little maid chasing the little rascal all over the room, trying to assassinate him. As Brother Chen continues explaining the real truth of the situation, little Ye Chen, knowing fully well that he can't let them believe his words, cries even louder, and this causes his father, Xinquan, to keep kicking Brother Chen's arse in frustration. At one point, upon beating Brother Chen to a pulp, Xinquan asks the idiot to show them the so-called gift he intended to give the young master. However, since he dropped it during little Ye Chen's altercation with his sister, Brother Chen searches all over his body, even his crotch, only to realize that it's long gone. By this time, Big Daddy ignores the old fool on the floor, commends the little maid for protecting the young master on her first day on the job, and then orders his butler to take her to rest so she can be back up in no time. Thereafter, he turns to his son, Xinquan, and while giving him the death stare, trash-talks him for not being able to properly train his dog, which almost cost them the future hope of their Liu family. As he turns to leave, he angrily tells Xinquan to clean up his mess himself, and Xinquan, pissed for disappointing his father, continues beating the living shit out of poor Brother Chen for hours till both, or one of them, pass out. About 30 minutes later, after Xinquan leaves the room, Ye Chen's butler extends his arms to little Ye Chen to carry him so he can take the maid away for treatment. But then Ye Chen, recalling the words he wrote on the floor under the maid in his blood, figures he can't let the butler see the words he wrote under his sister Yi Yi. So what does he do? At first, he tries shaking his head desperately as he covers his sister to avoid getting exposed. But unfortunately, that doesn't work at all, because the butler ultimately ends up picking him up and placing him in his crib. At this point, Little Bro considers knocking the guy out with lightning. But before he's able to do that, the butler picks Yi Yi up, exposing the pool of blood on the floor under where she lay, and little Ye Chen's left wondering how his sister got injured in their battle. Seconds later, the butler exchanges a weird look at little Ye Chen, almost as if he caught Ye Chen staring, but eventually leaves the room with Yi Yi after assigning another maid to clean the young master's room. Once the butler's gone, the little protagonist settles back into his crib and continues thinking about the other important things he has to do, like sucking his mother's melons till they dry out again. Moments later, while Xinquan's wife engages herself in a deep body massage, trying to relax, the little devil finds and approaches her, so they can begin their next suck session. Upon seeing her son, the poor woman freaks out and keeps asking the little man why he's there again. With no other time to waste, Little Bro just latches onto his mother's right melon and continues sucking all that white substance till he's satisfied again. Apparently, little Ye Chen plans to accelerate his growth until he can speak clearly, so that once Yi Yi returns from treatment, he'll be able to tell her about his situation. About a week after the Ye Chen, Yi Yi altercation, little Ye Chen, having sucked his mother dry throughout, accelerates his growth to the state of a 3-year-old and masters the speech ability. By the time Yi Yi returns from treatment, fully ready for round 2, he urges her to chill out a little, and then tells her that he's her brother. As Yi Yi stares at him in confusion, Ye Chen talks about the cake he bought them on the last night they saw each other, something only the real Ye Chen will know, and then asks her if the cake was delicious. At this point, Yi Yi gasps in shock as her mind retraces to the night all their lives went to shit, and relives the horrible things she saw that day. Apparently, a few minutes before Ye Chen was called out that night, he bought a cake for his 3 sisters and called them out of bed pretty late, just to share it among all of them. However, as he was about to split it, he received the dreadful call from Brother Chen and left instantly to avoid being left behind. Shortly after leaving, Yi Yi, who happened to be the oldest amongst the three, stops one of her younger sisters from stealing bites off the cake so they can wait for their brother to come back and eat together with them. However, after waiting for several hours, even past midnight, their beloved brother never came back to them. At this point in the memory recap, Yi Yi forces herself to stop remembering the details of the horrible night and instantly starts crying her heart out. To avoid alerting the finicky bastards, little Ye Chen quickly covers her mouth with his tiny fingers and reminds her that they can't risk being too loud so the Liu bastards don't listen in on their conversation. Soon after settling that, Yi Yi shuts her trap and hugs her big little brother as tight as she can. Then, in a soft voice, she asks Ye Chen if he's really her brother. But before he responds to her question, the protagonist begs her to let him go so his little body doesn't fail under her tight squeeze. Once he's free, little Ye Chen asks Yi Yi several questions to find out how she was captured and brought there, where Shuang and San San, the other two sisters, are, as well as how she knew that it was the Liu family who killed him. Upon surviving his rigorous shakes, Yi Yi reports that the day he went out for a long time and didn't come back, Shuang and San San got really hungry and began imagining if their big brother, Ye Chen, had abandoned them. After waiting for one more hour, Yi Yi decided to go to the place where Ye Chen usually takes his missions to look for him and hopefully see if he's okay. However, when she got to the location, the only thing she saw that night was information about his disappearance, as well as several other random people facing an old lapdog of the Liu family, Brother Chen, and demanding to know where he sent their loved ones. One time, a woman desperately confronted the old smoker asking where he kept her husband since he hadn't come back yet. But then the old fool kicked the shit out of the innocent woman, like she was being a nuisance, and then continued his smoke. Moments later, another man, whom we're gonna call Sad Eyes, raised his fist at Brother Chen, demanding to know where his fiancée is, especially after seeing her, or him, enter the otherworld portal with Xingquan earlier and ordered the other people around Brother Chen to beat the fool up to a pulp. Sadly, before Sad Eyes could touch a single hair on Chen's head, Brother Chen burned him to a crisp using his special fire element technique and challenged the others surrounding to come at him if they wanted a similar fate. As it turns out, Brother Chen tried to cover up his crime by accusing the worried people of spreading rumors about Xingquan and reminding them that since the price of the mission was high, simply because it was high risk, then the responsibilities of the hunters' lives were in their hands. Having heard enough of his sister's narration, little Ye Chen tells Yi Yi a little more about the old fool, Brother Chen, aka the person who deceived all of them hunters, and then tells her that he deserves to die for everything he's done. Following this, he asks about Shuang and San San, and suddenly Yi Yi gets so sad and teary. Confused, our protagonist asks his little sister what the matter is, and she tells him that moments after finding out about his situation at the guild, she went back to the house to settle their other siblings safely before returning to avenge him. However, when she got back to their area, she realized that a demon tide had emerged from the otherworld portal, gotten very close to their apartment, and had leveled several apartment buildings to the ground, including theirs. As she continues her story, little Yi Yi is seen in a flashback, running frantically alongside several divine sense hunters to check up on her other sisters, Shuang and San San, scared that the worst might have happened to them. A few moments later, when she finally arrives at the ruins, poor Yi Yi finds their apartment building in shambles. So, she runs toward a certain spot and gnaws through the debris with her blood-stained hands, almost as if Shuang and San San were buried under there. Soon after gnawing at the ground for 30 minutes, the little twerp desperately calls her big brother's name and cries her heart out. At this point, little Ye Chen feels sorry for his sad sister, so he stops the recap, urges her not to cry, and then proceeds to tell her just how much the Liu family of assholes destroyed them and the others. Now that they have the chance, he promises his tear-soaked little sister that they'll work together and avenge their sisters, as well as every other person Big Daddy and his band of monsters have killed or ruined. For now, though, the first blood sacrifice for their cause will be the douchebag surnamed Chen, so they can work on getting stronger. While little Ye Chen briefs his sister on their next few moves, Brother Chen, on the other hand, gets locked up in a cage, deep underground, and is left there begging for mercy, claiming that he really came to deliver a gift, Not too long after he gets locked up, another entrance to the cell is opened, and the poor guy turns and spots a really ugly and disgusting demon leering voraciously toward him. Upon realizing what's coming for him, Bro shits himself, goes on his knees, and keeps on begging the demon to spare him. Unfortunately for him, it's already too late, because in less than a minute, the ugly demon devours him whole, like a chicken. A few minutes later, after telling Yi Yi about Brother Chen's demise, little Ye Chen moves on to tell his little sister that the next thing on their agenda is turning the Liu family upside down. Thereafter, he explains a few more details in their plan, and Yi Yi, having heard the plan he's trying to pass across, promises to listen to and do everything he says. That being said, she suddenly remembers that she still has a mission: to bathe her smaller, older brother, and so she picks him up and plays with his cute little body a little bit. By this time, little Ye Chen forbids her from seeing his nakedness, simply because he's her big brother. But just then, Yi Yi tells him that since they're not blood siblings, and she's his personal maid, then it's part of her responsibility to meet his daily needs. With that said, she mutters a few more happy words and rushes to little Ye Chen's royal bathroom to see her big brother's pee-pee for the first time. Moments later, after preparing the little devil's bathwater, Yi Yi approaches him and urges him to take off his clothes. But little Ye Chen refuses to let her do that for him, as he feels he can undress himself. Soon after yeeting all of Ye Chen's clothes off his cute baby body, Yi Yi finally gets to see the prize for herself, little Ye Chen's 2-inch schlong, and she calls it cute. Imagine rizzing a girl up and then showing her your junk, only for her to call it cute. Let's just say our protagonist nearly dies from humiliation because once he hears the word cute coming from his sister's mouth, he covers his junk and continues forbidding her from ever looking at his stuff ever again. Seconds later, Yi Yi stares at him, confused, and then tells him that since she's the bigger one now, and he used to bathe them before, it's her turn to return the favor. Right after saying this, she gets up, turns her back on the poor little fella, and begins undressing herself. Thankfully, before the protagonist gets his first traumatic childhood memory at only 5 months old, Yi Yi quickly wraps herself in a towel and places him in a bowl floating inside the bathtub. As she bathes her big brother, Yi Yi asks him why these rich bastards are taking baths every day and eating good food, even throwing out leftovers to the dogs, when the commoners outside the estate struggle desperately just to get a little bit of food, much less bathe. Since there's no valid response for that, other than the fact that they're just being selfish assholes, the little protagonist tells his sister that they must fight for a fair world with their own hands. With that said, Yi Yi scrubs Bro's 2-inch baby ruler, and poor Ye Chen cries throughout the rest of the bath. About an hour later, after taking her bath, Yi Yi puts little Chen to rest on the floor while she washes his clothes, and little Chen spends the next few minutes shivering and thinking about how his dignity had just been taken away from him. When Yi Yi notices him looking all gloomy, she asks him what the matter is, but Ye Chen ignores her. By this time, Yi Yi calls him out for being mean to her, and then reminds him that he's never been mean to her before. Realizing just how immature he's acting, given how mentally grown he is, Bro gets up, apologizes for acting like a child earlier, even though he is one, and then asks her how she awakened her wind element abilities, when the earliest recorded divine sense awakening was at 12 years old. In response, Yi Yi tells him that she doesn't know either, because one day, all of a sudden, a panel-like thing appeared in front of her and showed her status. Soon after seeing her status screen, however, Yi Yi says a dialogue box also popped up and told her how to awaken the wind powers. Upon following the instructions given, she awakened her wind divine sense and has been like that ever since. Having heard his sister talk about a panel suddenly opening up in front of her, little Ye Chen opens his status screen and ultimately notices the small chat box with the audio visualizers on a separate page at the bottom right of his entire screen. Seeing this, little Bro frowns his cute little face and starts to wonder why Yi Yi also awakened her divine sense at such a young age, much less unlocked the Hunter interface. If anything, our protagonist knows their awakening is not a coincidence, and there must be something significant behind this. He just needs to find out what it is. Before long, Yi Yi spots her elder brother frowning, so she asks him if there's anything wrong with him, and he assures her that it's nothing. Soon enough, he continues his conversation with Yi Yi by reminding her that she needs to become stronger quickly, and Yi Yi promises to train even harder down the hall whenever he's asleep. Satisfied with her response, little Ye Chen pats her head in approval, calling her responsible, only for them to be interrupted by a slight knock on the door. Since it's almost dinner time, Big Daddy got worried about his grandson getting hungry again, so he had Ye Chen's mom pump some white melon juice for him in advance, just to help him have his dinner early and let his mom rest. After collecting the feeding bottle full of milk and watching the maid leave, Ye Chen reminds his sister one more time to always use every resource in the Liu family to become stronger much faster. By this time, a confused Yi Yi asks him if he knows of any other way to become stronger, and Ye Chen just tells his sister to open her mouth and find out for herself. The moment Yi Yi opens up, Ye Chen puts the feeding bottle's tip in her mouth and urges her to drink the contents up. After taking a few gulps, Yi Yi suddenly feels her power flowing out so easily, and so she asks her big brother why that's happening. Ye Chen tells her that it's because his biological mother's tribe, or constitution, can transform a certain mysterious beast's special crystals from the Liu family into something with the same effects as the high-level magic beast crystals, something A-rank subjugation squads would have difficulty obtaining. Despite the essence's rarity, Ye Chen tells his sister that his mother can continuously produce the essence in the milk like a freaking cow, and the even more baffling fact is that such techniques and procedures were never recorded in the Divine Sense Academy. That being said, he tells his sister that he suspects that the noble families and those pulling the strings have been hiding many things from the public, making sure that they only give the masses partial information to make them fight and die for those useless things. While they climb up the ranks in the Liu family and become stronger, the little rascal tells his sister that they must uncover all the secrets of the nobles and use them against them. Around that same time, Yi Yi offers her elder brother some milk to drink, but Ye Chen refuses to taste a single drop, so she can drink as much as possible to reach her divine sense limit faster. In the meantime, he gets down from his bed and heads toward his mother's room, leaving his sister with the feeding bottle to have his meal as well. Less than 5 minutes later, the little devil makes it to his mother's room and spends the entire night slurping as much melon juice as possible till she loses her shit and crashes out. To avoid any injuries or mistakes, the maids rush out to prepare medicinal meals for Ye Chen's mother. But as for the little devil, he just sits and sucks quietly, anticipating how he and Yi Yi will turn the Liu family upside down for being decade-long assholes. Later that night, while crawling in his room, the little protagonist spots the gift box Brother Chen dropped during his visit earlier under a large drawer and rushes over to pick it up. Right before opening it up, Ye Chen thinks about how Brother Chen must have sold out his entire assets to get the gift, since the Liu family won't care about ordinary things, and then wonders what the hell could be inside. Upon opening the gift box, the little rascal finds a black magic beast crystal and racks his 10-ounce brain to try to figure out what he's seeing. Just then, the chat box he saw earlier beams to life, tells him that the black crystal contained a rare skill crystal, and then proceeds to explain that absorbing such a crystal will grant him the thunder element skill, Lightning Spear. Hearing this, little Ye Chen, who knows that skills require years of cultivation to be learned, asks the chat box if skills really can be absorbed and learned in a matter of seconds, and the chat box AI ultimately says yes. Apparently, amongst various beast races, some species evolve and appear with special beast divine abilities. If such beasts are hunted, then there's a really slim chance of obtaining skill crystals that strengthen the corresponding skill's energy circuits. In other words, skills that normally take years of cultivation can be instantly learned. That being said, our little protagonist pauses for a second and asks his chat box why it knows exactly what he's thinking. When the chat box tells him it's because it's the system residing in his consciousness, little Ye Chen gets a little disappointed, as he reminds the chat box that he was a high school student who was once obsessed with mobile games and web novels before the apocalypse. In his experience, those system-genre web novels usually create mysterious systems to issue tons of tasks to the host and give them generous rewards out of nowhere upon completion. Soon after adding some details to his recent point, Ye Chen, who's now seriously pissed, calls out the crappy POS chatbox AI for always displaying his realm level and divine sense abilities and doing nothing to help his cause. By this time, the chatbox AI also crashes out, as it reminds the ungrateful little twerp about the time it told him about his reincarnation ability at the point of his past self's death, and also lets Ye Chen know that he would have died right then if he wasn't informed on time. Hearing this, Ye Chen calms his balls and asks the chatbox about its relationship with Yi Yi's system. The chatbox then responds, still pissed at the little shit, that it didn't even know that there was another system. So, rather than wasting his time chatting with a GPT 0.9 model AI, the chatbox suggests he focus on strengthening himself instead so he can achieve his revenge on his enemies. Upon realizing that the chatbox is right, Ye Chen gets back on his feet, clears the system's screen, and then absorbs the divine sense energy flow trapped inside the black crystal. Soon after absorbing all of the crystal's essence, little Ye Chen learns the lightning spear skill and successfully produces a real lightning spear that he holds above his head. For some context, it's revealed that a divine sense skill normally takes 10 years of cultivation and constant strengthening of the energy circuits to master. As Ye Chen completes 10 years' worth of training in less than a minute, he claims to feel the powerful lightning force in his body condensed into the spear form, which can then be used for close combat or thrown as a projectile. To test the lightning spear's power, the little devil blasts a hole in his room wall with the spear and throws it out, causing a loud noise that alerts the adults. Shortly after yeeting the lightning spear, Big Daddy and his parents rush to his room, with Shinquan complaining over his son making such a commotion late at night. However, the moment they spot the huge hole in the wall, shirtless Shinquan, with SpongeBob briefs on, struggles to understand what the hell just happened. Around that same time, Big Daddy's butler tells his boss that he was just supervising Yi Yi's servants' training when suddenly a powerful lightning bolt shot out from Ye Chan's room. During that time, he checked to make sure that Ye Chen was the only one inside and nobody else. Having heard the butler's words, Big Daddy picks his grandson up and praises his little bundle of joy, as well as his daughter-in-law, for possessing divine sense skills so quickly and constantly producing results. Jealous of his son's early achievements, Shinquan calls the protagonist a troublesome brat for causing problems late at night. But then this doting father confronts him for getting jealous of a 5-month-old baby who has exceptional talent, when all he could do at his age was cry like a fool. After that, Big Daddy continues petting little Ye Chen, till he eventually decides to let his genius grandson experience their family's annual Otherworld hunting festival early. With that settled, Big Daddy takes his family to a weird room, calls his butler, and asks him if the preparations for the festival are ready. Once the man assures him that the target team has already departed, with Shinquan's people mixed in among them to guide them toward the destination, Big Daddy gets super excited and yaps a few about his useless family's descendants experiencing what it means to be above others, alerting Ye Chen and his little sister as they wonder what he might be trying to do. Thereafter, he walks to a weird magic circle thingy in the middle of the room and activates the portal hidden beneath the circle with his purple lightning divine sense powers. While he's at it, a terrified Ye Chen's left, wondering why the Liu family can actually open gates on their own, when interdimensional gates are always rumored to be randomly generated. If there's anything Ye Chen has learned these past 5 months, it's that these noble assholes have been hiding so many useful things from those desperately trying to survive for ages, now that it's very insane to think about. Shortly after activating the portal, Big Daddy and the rest of his family, including the newborn clinging to his mother's melons, all walk through it and appear very close to the edge of a mountain cliff. While the little protagonist suckles on his mom's white melon juice, Shinquan quickly spots smoke seeping out of a particular spot in the forest beneath the cliff they're on, and so he calls everyone's attention, informing them that the beasts are coming. The moment the Liu family nobles trace the origin of the smoke plume, they all spot several divine sense hunters struggling to stand their ground as they get surrounded by a small group of hard-shelled giant python monsters. At one point in their struggle, one of the soldiers tries to cut through a giant python's hard shell, but when that doesn't work, He informs his team leader, who's currently holding up a defensive shield against that same giant python, and then asks him why a B-rank one-horned python is appearing at a C-rank portal. Not too long after spotting the battlefield, Ye Chen and Yi Yi spot one of their other sisters, Shuang Xuan, alive and well, and fighting a C-rank one-horned python alone. At a point in her battle, the one-horned python nearly chops her head off with its razor-sharp fangs. But thankfully, she overpowered the horned bastard with just raw strength and split its mouth in half. Around that same time, the team leader's defensive shield starts cracking, so before it all comes crashing down on him, he orders everyone to fall back slowly while they fight back. Seconds later, one of the team leader's men turns his back against him and lunges at the poor team leader to kill him. Shuang spots the man charging at the team leader and does her best to alert the team leader on time. Unfortunately, it was already too late, because before the team leader even heard her, the huge man got behind him and ended him in a single strike. Soon after watching his team leader die in the hands of the infamous human butcher, another soldier charges at the killer to end him. But then the killer, who spots him coming a mile away, slices the guy's arm off and kills him too. Upon seeing just how strong this buff killer is, another soldier on the battlefield recognizes and informs his colleagues that the killer is Kui Xiong, the human butcher, who was apparently sentenced to death not too long ago. Hearing this, the brain-dead killer, Xiong, cackles like a wizard on meth and throws his second kill to the giant pythons for a light snack. After witnessing such ghastly things happen right in his face, our little protagonist remembers Kui Xiong to be the one who severely injured him and allowed Xin Quan to deliver the fatal blow. Soon after recalling how the huge and tall bastard flung someone into the beast's mouth in his past life, Ye Chen remembers how he and the big hunk of muscle clashed fists in mortal combat and fought each other till he was exhausted and died back then. If that murderous demon, who takes pleasure in slaughtering divine awakeners and ordinary people, is on the battlefield, alive, then it's highly likely that the scum from the Liu family pulled the dangerous criminal off the death penalty and made him into their thug till that very day. Since that's the case, little Ye Chan knows he has to save Shuang without drawing any attention to himself. As such, he racks his brains for a few more seconds and ultimately comes up with a reasonable plan to save his other little sister. After waiting a few more seconds for the perfect time, little bro latches his gums on his mom's melons, sucks a mouthful of the sweet white stuff, pissing his mother off, and vomits all that disgusting white sticky goo on his mother's melons. As mom crashes out in disgust, she mistakenly yeets her devilish son into the air out of disgust, leaving him vulnerable to a dangerous mixture of gravity and hard rock, and ends up pissing off Big Daddy. Thankfully, before our sneaky protagonist does his last cordless bungee jump at just 5 months old, his little sister, camouflaging as his maid, lunges at and catches him right in the nick of time. Upon landing, she quietly asks her big brother if he's doing okay. But then Ye Chen, who can't risk exposing their plan, urges her to keep her mouth shut and wait till things get chaotic later, so he can signal her to go save Shuang, and Yi Yi obliges. A few seconds later, Xin Quan slaps the shit out of his wife for being so careless and clumsy. But instead of her being remorseful for her mistake, his wife loses her shit even more and confronts the adult child for hitting her. With the tension building, she goes into attack mode and charges at her husband, slamming profanities on his name with real murderous intent. Luckily for both of them, Big Daddy intervenes just as they're about to cut each other up and focuses his anger on the real culprit here, his daughter-in-law. Honestly, it's pretty normal, natural even, for newborns to spit up milk and stain every single piece of fabric around them. However, what's not normal at all is the way Xin Quan's wife treated her kid just because he got a little white slime on her beautiful dress. And Big Daddy tells her in all his aura and splendor that that's messed up. As for the fight they were about to have, he reminded the idiots that they carry the responsibility of both families, so they have to control their tempers, and almost instantly, Xin Quan and his piece of shit wife return to normal. At this point, Yi Yi silently asks her big brother what their next course of action is, and he just urges her to keep calm, as he's pretty sure that the third party will be arriving soon. Not too long after, the nobles hear leaves and shrubs rustling in the forest behind them, and instantly get alert. Soon enough, 3 deadly goblin scouts sniff their way out of the shrubs and growl to send a signal to the main army the moment they spot the nobles standing in the middle of freaking nowhere. Right after killing all 3 goblins, Shin-Quan asks how the monsters found them, when it was reported that the surrounding area was already cleared. Hearing this, Big Daddy literally calls his son a brainless dumbass before moving on to explain that the potency of the white stuff in his wife's melons, and the second hole, apparently, is much stronger than pure high-grade essence. In other words, the stuff little Ye Chen suckles so much has a fatal attraction to demon beasts and will most likely draw in the high-level ones. A few moments later, the peak B-rank elite goblins make their appearance and lunge at the nobles, hoping to capture and eat them all. While the nobles all get their hands full dealing with the goblins, little Ye Chen signals his little sister to get them off the cliff they're on now before the others notice. With no time to lose, Yi Yi grabs her little older brother, falls off the cliff with him, and activates her wind-type flight skill to fly them both to the battlefield. On their way to the giant pythons, the little protagonist asks how and when she learned the wind-type flight skills, and Yi Yi tells him that she did so by completing the task that the system gave her earlier. When asked what the task was all about, Yi Yi happily tells her little big brother that the system told her to give him a bath, which she did some nights ago, and Ye Chen, understandably pissed at the ridiculousness of such a mission, has a mini crash-out and curses the system under his breath. While Ye Chen and Yi Yi make their way to the battlefield, Shuang Shuang, on the other hand, desperately kills off the smaller snakes to save hers and her colleagues' lives. At one point in the battle, a curvy lady tank in the squad gets her full-body shield broken by an angry one-horned giant python, and so she informs the captain that they can't hold out much longer. Having realized how bad the situation is, the squad captain asks Kui Xiong why he's there tormenting them when they don't exactly have any grudges against each other, and the crazed killer tells him it's because he wants to enjoy the sound of living beings wailing in his hands. Thanks to his master, whose identity he kept hidden at the time, he still has the chance to continue enjoying his guilty pleasure, and he plans on doing so for a very long time. Upon hearing the word master, the squad captain crashes out pretty badly and accuses Xiong's so-called master of violating the guild's subjugation agreement illegally. Since Cap's not willing to see the truth for what it is, Xiong helps him understand that laws are for the lowly commoners, like them, because apparently those things don't exist for the nobles. Right after spewing all that nonsense, he vanishes for a second, appears shortly behind the lady tank, runs his entire arm through her stomach, killing her, and then flings her inside a nearby python's mouth as a snack. By this time, Cap realizes that they've failed their mission woefully, and so he orders whatever's left of his men to scatter, run, and save whoever can escape, including Shuang Shuang, too. Soon after giving that order, he turns to the devil himself, Xiong, and strikes the man. To his dismay, Xiong disappears again, evading the monster, grabs his head from behind, and smashes it on the ground. Just as he's about to finish Cap off, Shuang Shuang grabs a little rock, throws it at the bastard, and hits him in the shoulder. Irritated by such a stupid act, Xiong drops the injured captain and promises Shuang Shuang a slow and painful death for encountering him at the worst possible time in her life. Thereafter, he lunges at her with murderous intent and stretches his arm out to puncture and kill her, just like he did with the others. Fortunately for Shuang Shuang, who just stands there waiting for her death, the captain gets back on his feet, gets in between both of them, risking death, and ultimately ends up getting stabbed through his stomach by the angry Xiong after breaking his sword. After killing the captain for good, Xiong nonchalantly flings him into the python's mouth, just like he did the lady tank from earlier, and faces a terrified Shuang Shuang, who's scared shitless that she might meet a similar fate. Before touching her, however, he observes the growth of that particular python behind, and expresses his disappointment when he realizes that it still needs just a little more meat for it to break through and mutate into something even stronger. Apparently, the idiotic man originally planned to take Shuang Shuang back to his hiding spot and make her into a cute specimen for his collection. Now that he doesn't need to do that anymore, he extends his bloody hands towards her in anticipation of killing her. Seconds before meeting her demise, poor Shuang Shuang calls her brother and sister's names, asking where they were. But just then, a familiar lightning spear approaches Xiong hot and fast, as Ye Chen assures his little sister that he's there to save her, and Kui Xiong easily deflects the spear out of his way. Not too long after, Yi Yi lands herself and Big Brother safely, and Shuang Shuang instantly sees her Big Brother's image inside the little kid. With no time to explain, little Ye Chen tells Shuang Shuang to focus on dealing with the current threat first, so they can live long enough to explain things later, and Shuang Shuang keeps her mouth shut. Thereafter, the little protagonist thinks about the situation of the beast for a second, and eventually figures that the one-horned giant python in front of him must be a demon beast evolving after devouring a certain number of divine awakeners. As he wastes time trying to remember if there's been any record at his commoner school in his past life, Kui Xiong, on the other hand, recovers fully from the after effects of the lightning attack earlier, and instantly recognizes the little bastard and the silver-haired girl near him to be his extraordinarily talented young master, as well as his personal female slave. Although confused, seeing as both Ye Chen and Yi Yi are supposed to be waiting with the other noble assholes while he completes his mission, Xiong still asks both of them why and how they know the little redhead, who's supposed to be fodder. Before the little rascal can respond, Xiong acts like a crackhead again, fiddling and scratching, his face like an addict, and tries to figure out what he's to do in a situation like the one he's in. Around this same time, Ye Chen remembers some nonsense about the typical brainless, brutal villain from many power fantasy novels he's read in his past life. But before he's able to get anything out, the crazy killer decides to complete his mission anyway. Turn Yi Yi, who he'll say apparently abducted Ye Chen, and then finally return the infant to Big Daddy for his creamy reward when he's done. That being said, the useless hunk of muscle activates his weapon fusion metal-type divine sense and fuses all the weapons lying around with his body. Seeing this, little Ye Chen knows that his peak C-rank lightning-type powers, Yi Yi's peak wind-type D-rank powers, and Shuang Shuang's intermediate D-rank body refinement ability all can't compete against this bastard's B-rank metal powers, simply because of the large level gap. However, before giving up, little Ye Chen gets a brilliant idea, and so he instructs his sisters to listen to the next few things he'll tell them to do. Shortly after fusing all that metal to his body, Kui Xiong attacks both Yi Yi and Shuang Shuang after promising to protect his young master, but Ye Chen defends against the attacks by activating a bunch of lightning skills and dashing around the battlefield like clockwork. The moment Kui Xiong notices the young master using the divine martial refinement, a forbidden technique not just anyone should master, he suddenly remembers how he killed a D-rank dude who went toe-to-toe with him before he was ultimately killed by his master, and assumes that the young master of the Liu family, aka Ye Chen, must be that D-rank fighter from his past. That being said, little Ye Chen continues thinking of his next move as he dashes around the battlefield, knowing fully well that an infant's body can't contain the energy of an adult physique. So once he gets his chance, he calls both his sisters, signaling them to do their part. And almost instantly, Shuang Shuang picks up a large boulder and hurls it toward the perpetrator. To avoid getting hit, Bro jumps pretty high to dodge the boulder, but as soon as he lands, Yi Yi wraps him in a wind-dust storm and suffocates the shit out of the big hunk of muscle. As Kui Xiong works on getting himself out of the dust storm, little Ye Chen creates a lightning spear, amps it up to full power with the divine martial refinement, and throws it at his arch-nemesis. Naturally, Kui Xiong dodges the devastating power of the lightning spear and leaves it to crash into the several trees behind him. Seconds later, he tells the naughty young master that he knows he can't use the lightning spear again because it's comparable to a peak B-rank power, and then promises that, since he still needs to do his job, he will protect him from being hurt by killing Yi Yi and Shuang Shuang, after which he continues the battle against both brats. For his next move, Xiong, the brain-dead murderer, lunges at poor Shuang Shuang, as she appeared to be the weakest in the bunch. But fortunately for her, Yi Yi gets in his way, takes the hit, and gets pushed several feet behind till she crashes into a tree. Right after dealing with the annoying Yi Yi, Xiong promises to deal with her very soon, and then flings 2 metal projectiles at Shuang Shuang, which she dodges. Just as he's about to carry out his next attack, however, the little protagonist gets in his way, forces the guy to stop his pincer attack abruptly, and then makes sure he gets hit by the after effect of the killer's failed attack. Once the attack hits him, the little devil puts on a show, pretending to make the attack look very bad, and stages his unfortunate fall into Shuang Shuang's hands. Soon after, a very confused Kui Xiong asks little Ye Chen why he's so eager to die, But in response, Ye Chen tells him that he's the one who's dying. As the crazed butcher keeps staring at the injured baby, the thunderous voice of Big Daddy emanates from the sky, calling the killer an ungrateful dog and chastising him for trying to kill his own master. At this point, the idiotic musclehead finally understands what Ye Chen's lightning attack earlier was for. Apparently, shortly after defeating all the goblin monsters that had distracted them earlier, the nobles noticed that the little devil had disappeared, and Big Daddy became especially worried for the safety of his grandson. As for Xingquan, he spent his time yapping, chastising his bratty son for walking and running around, and then wondered where he and that little girl, who was supposed to be watching him, went. Upon realizing that the maid is also missing, Big Daddy crashes out really badly, and so he screams at his butler to make sure he stops at nothing to find his grandson, or else he'll do something rash. Not too long after finding out about the brat's disappearance, Big Daddy spots the huge lightning spear attack from earlier crashing into some trees, making a big mess out of everything, and zaps his way right to the POI instantly. Now that he's been caught in a compromising position, the airheaded killer knows there's no way to explain his situation, so he decides that his only option is to capture Shuang Shuang and use her as a bargaining chip for his pathetic life. However, when he lunges at her with murderous intent, Shuang Shuang, who spots him coming, picks up one of the killer's metal rods and throws it at him. Naturally, Kui Xiong dodges the attack, but just as he's about to grab the poor girl, Xingquan shows up, compares him to his other servant, Brother Chen, calling him a dog, and then attacks the bastard for going after his son. Even after begging his master to listen to what he had to say, Killer Kui Xiong ultimately met his end in the mouth of the same beast he fed divine awakeners into, and got turned into a good last meal for the king of the Hai, one-horned giant python horde. A few moments after eating Kui Xiong, the king python starts evolving, while Big Daddy's butler checks up on the crying young master to make sure he's not seriously injured. Once Big Daddy gets the assurance that he's okay, he commends Shuang Shuang and Yi Yi for doing a good job protecting their master, and then orders his butler to keep his eye on them. Thereafter, when the Snake King is ready for harvest, Big Daddy proceeds to harvest the rare treasures for his naughty grandson. By this time, little Ye Chen finally understands how these nobles get their power. Apparently, after tricking the civilian divine awakeners to feed the demon beasts with their flesh, the beasts undergo some kind of evolution, and the noble families reap the rewards. As usual, this information isn't available at the Commoners' Academy because it's controlled by the pieces of shit who run the aristocratic families. Even so, Big Daddy still spends the greater part of his afternoon bombing the evolved Snake King into smithereens and shamelessly harvesting different valuable items from its carcass. Once all the harvesting is completed, he celebrates with his butler as well as the other members of his family for making a harvest that's much better than what he'd originally expected. Soon after, Big Daddy instructs his butler to bring both Yi Yi and Shuang Shuang along with them to the mansion while the collection team gathers the remaining materials for the storage warehouse. Just as the butler's about to get to work, Big Daddy calls him back and instructs him to mix the low-grade stuff with some scraps so he can sell it at the Equipment Guild to those ordinary divine hunters as consumables. As for the higher-grade items, he orders them to put them all in display cases, inflate the prices, and then let those frontline divine teams bid on them until they bleed out all their funds. About the ultra-rare A-grade poison sac, which is usually only harvested when the Silver Horn Snake King evolves, he urges his men to take it to the imperial capital for the crowned prince to use for networking. Moving on to the silver snake horn they harvested from the king snake, he instructs that they take it to the auction house for bidding. Finally, about the extremely hard sky snake scales that only form when the Snake King undergoes the super evolution status, Big Daddy instructs his butler to reshape them into a protective heart treasure for his precious little rascal of a grandson, and the butler accepts his master's wishes. Before long, the negative IQ Xingquan approaches his dandy father and asks him to give him the Snake King's essence so he can be stronger. However, Big Daddy, who knows that his son can't amount to anything anymore in this manhwa, reminds the negative IQ dimwit that, since he has such an excellent wife, having his son share some material with him would be better than hogging everything for himself. Even though Big Daddy was right, The idiot still stares angrily at his little son, almost as if he wanted to smack the smug look on his face or something, and the little devil continues mocking his POS father. Eventually, when he's done talking, Big Daddy gives the Snake King's essence to his butler and tells him to give that to his eldest son, who's currently breaking through the B-rank intermediate realm, so he can use the essence to its maximum potential. Though confused at first, the butler bows his head in happiness, thanks his master for his generosity, and then dedicates his and his son's lives to serving the Liu family till death. Several days later, on a random night, Shuang Shuang and Yi Yi sneak into Ye Chen's room to inform him that the redhead has also been arranged as his personal maid. Despite hearing the good news, our worrisome little protagonist stares at the B-rank superior defense equipment, the Silver Snake King's Super Evolution Skyscale Heart Protection Pendant, and frowns at it intently. When Shuang Shuang asks him what the matter is, little Ye Chen shoots a little lightning at the heart protection scale just to test how premium its defense properties are, and then gets very angry when nothing happens. Soon enough, he explains to his confused sisters that the operation he just performed has once again confirmed something for him, and it's that interdimensional demon beasts that devour enough divine awakeners will undergo some kind of super evolution. Another piece of information that's not available at the Divine Academy as well. Explaining further, little Ye Chen tells his sisters that he's discovered that the aristocratic families monopolize lots of secret information, using the lives of civilian divine awakeners to provide them with premium materials far beyond what's available in the market. These gruesome methods allow them to easily obtain resources that grant them much stronger power than the civilian divine awakeners, as well as more premium equipment, all of which enables them to rule the commoners forever. In other words, everything that's being preached and taught at the Divine Academy, stuff about divine awakeners sharing the great mission of risking their lives to protect those without power, is all BS propaganda pushed by these aristocrats to keep the commoners hopeful and in check. Upon hearing everything their brother just said, both Yi Yi and Shuang Shuang ask little Ye Chen if information is really that powerful, and the baby eventually tells them that he's only just experiencing how terrifying an information gap can be. Thankfully, it's not too late to make amends, as Ye Chen grabs his sister's cheeks and tells them that till they get strong enough to face the nobles, they need to use the Liu family to study hard and dig up more information that the nobles have been hiding together. Having said all that, little bro asks Shuang Shuang why she was with that divine team earlier. But just as she's about to respond, Yi Yi and Ye Chen ask her where San San, their third sister, is, as well as why she's so powerful. After a brief pause, Shuang Shuang's voice gets shaky, and she begins crying out loud. Thankfully, before the dumbass alerts the other adults, Ye Chen shushes her and lets her know that she can't cry out loud in there at all. Soon after cleaning her tears and calming down, Shuang Shuang proceeds to narrate exactly what happened on the night Yi Yi and Ye Chen disappeared. A few hours after Yi Yi went out to find Ye Chen, poor Shuang Shuang became extremely hungry and nearly stole a bite out of the cute cake her big brother bought them. However, upon remembering Yi Yi's warnings from earlier, Shuang Shuang decided against it, turned to tell their other sister, San San, that they should go out to find their brother and Yi Yi before the cream melts, and soon realized that San San was nowhere to be found. Initially, she thought San San was just playing a sick game of hide-and-seek with her, so she screamed into the void of the dark room and told her little sister to stop playing such scary tricks on her. However, when her big brother and sister realized that San San ran out by herself, they ask poor Shuang Shuang how that even happened in the first place, and she tells them that she hasn't the slightest idea. After searching everywhere for San San, Shuang Shuang says she ran to the rooftop to try her luck, but unfortunately she found something even more terrifying there. A bad person holding a weird golden staff, trying to summon a demon beast tide. Upon hearing this, Yi Yi and the little protagonist exchange shocked looks, as Yi Yi asks to confirm if a demon beast tide can be summoned and controlled by a mere human, as opposed to what they've been told about them being uncontrollable natural disasters. As the flashback continues, little Shuang Shuang can be seen searching for San San all over the roof, only for her to stop when she spots something pretty dangerous and observes the situation a little bit more. At the far end of the roof stood a bastard with red eyes wearing a wine-colored jacket and holding a staff fitted with a special stone. Moments later, the evil man sticks the staff into the concrete on the rooftop, activates a magic circle, and ultimately ends up opening up an otherworldly portal. Soon after doing that dastardly act, various monsters and fiery demonic beasts from hell peep out of the opened portal and begin the destruction of that part of the city. Before poor Shuang Shuang could even realize what was happening, she found herself getting chased around by a hellhound. Luckily for her, just as the demon beast was about to catch her, a system panel suddenly popped up, telling her about her awakened body cultivating divine power for strength and speed, and then informed her to try jumping to the opposite building quickly to activate the powers. With no other option left, Shuang Shuang made the leap of faith and ran desperately till she met with the captain of the Beast-Tide subjugation team. Upon hearing her story, the good guys in there took her in and made her much stronger than she was back then. Soon after hearing about Shuang Shuang's system panel appearance, Ye Chen gets seriously suspicious, because these unheard-of miracles keep happening one after the other to all three of them. Given what's happened so far, Ye Chen tells his sisters that he strongly feels that San San might have had the same experience they did, and so she might still be very much alive. Now that they are reunited, however, he reminds his sisters yet again to use all of the Liu family's information network and work together to find clues about San San's whereabouts. That being said, Shuang Shuang receives a task from the system panel, which seems to be suspiciously interested in seeing MC's nakedness, and then tells her people that there's a reward for completing it. Right after saying all that, she picks up the little protagonist, who fears history's about to repeat itself, and then reveals that the system wants her to give her big brother a nice bath. At this point, poor Ye Chen does his best to resist the crazy system's demands, screaming and barking orders at his little sisters to put him down. Unfortunately, when they get to the bathtub, Shuang Shuang undresses her little elder brother and sneaks a peek at his little pee-pee, just like Yi Yi did earlier. Upon calling the little pencil tip cute, the evil Shuang Shuang flicks our young and beautiful MC's pee-pee right in front of our face, holds him in place, and dunks his entire body inside the water. Not even plot armor could save him from that horrible embarrassment that ensued. Moments after scrubbing Ye Chen's dirty body, the girls leave him to one side of the tub to recover from the embarrassing bath he just had and focus on having as much fun in the bathtub as they can. The moment they're done bathing, they dry themselves, get dressed, and continue yapping about how well-behaved their cute brother was during the nice bath, all while strolling through the big mansion's corridor. At one point in their stroll, Shuang Shuang freezes in shock and fear, and Ye Chen, noticing this, asks her what the matter is. When she gathers enough courage to speak, Shuang Shuang points to the man with the eye scar behind the butler, a few meters away from them, and then tells her siblings that the Beast-Tide was caused by him specifically. Around that same time, Yi Yi and Ye Chen turn to look in front of them so they can get a good look at the bastard Shuang Shuang just told them about. After a quick recollection of the terrifying things she experienced on that rooftop that fateful night, Ye Chen quietly tells his terrified sister to wipe that nervous look off her face and keep walking, because the man in question just happens to be the butler's son, hence why he's following his daddy. A few seconds later, the butler and his son come face to face with the young master and his siblings. For a moment, Shuang Shuang and Scarface's gazes meet, which appeared weird to Scarface initially. But eventually, the girls conduct themselves properly and greet the butler warmly. Impressed by their etiquette, both adults pay their respects to the young master, ignoring his maids, and continue walking. Upon walking a few steps forward, the butler stops at Big Daddy's glamorous meeting hall's entrance and announces to the head of the house inside that his son, Zhou Qing, a.k.a. Scarface, has returned. Less than a second later, Big Daddy permits them to come in for their briefing, but just as the duo enters the office, Ye Chen, who just watched them get in, decides to rush inside and go see what they're plotting. When Yi Yi hears this, she gets a little confused and asks Ye Chen if he has a plan, just in case they're discovered. Since he's still an innocent baby in Big Daddy's eyes, Ye Chen assures his sisters not to worry about shit like that and instead follow his lead. A few moments later, the little protagonist busts into the meeting hall unannounced, with the girls chasing him, and they all act like Ye Chen was playfully running away from them like a normal child would. As Ye Chen giggles all over the room, Yi Yi and Shuang Shuang bow their heads and apologize to the master for not properly handling the young master. Just then, Little Ye Chen says the word grandpa, and Big Daddy's stone-cold heart melts instantly as he ushers the girls out of the room after letting his grandson sit on his lap through the meeting. As soon as the commotion's settled, Big Daddy begins the meeting by telling the Zhou adults about the undercurrents in the imperial capital. With the current turn of events, it so happens that their Liu family's chance to rise in power is approaching, meaning that they're going to need more quality essence and materials for networking on all fronts. That being said, he then asks the butler, Mr. Zhou, for the progress of the preparations for the new round of beast tides, and Zhou Qing, the butler's son, assures Big Daddy that they've already found new demon beast groups in the other dimension and can launch at any given time. The only issue they face now is that after the last beast tide, the city's Divine Awakener numbers have been depleted by 30%. Since it's only been 3 months since the incident happened, the new batch of graduates from the Divine Academy hasn't graduated yet to replenish the labor market of Awakeners just yet, and so they can't risk sending more Awakeners to die. Having heard every demonic thing this bastard just let out of his stupid mouth, little Ye Chen slams his hand on Big Daddy's armrest as he realizes, while remembering a bullshit speech one of his teachers gave him at the academy during his past life about the Awakeners being humanity's chosen protectors and whatnot, that the teachers at the academy are also the aristocrats' lackeys because they're actively participating in disseminating false information so that they can all continuously go to their deaths. If that's not messed up enough, then tell me what is. Damn. Anyway, as the meeting continues, the butler assures Big Daddy that he's arranged with the Task Guild to issue several high-reward missions to attract many outsider Divine Awakened teams. And Big Daddy, happy to hear this, praises old Zhou and his family for serving the Liu family loyally for 3 generations. Around this time, the butler signals to his son to bow down and show his appreciation to their master, and almost instantly, Zhou goes on his knees and proclaims his undying loyalty to the Liu clan. After that, the butler then thanks his master for giving Zhou Qing the Snake King's life essence earlier and enabling the scarred dimwit to reach the peak of Divine Awakening B rank. Satisfied with their responses, Big Daddy wears a big smile on his face and then orders the duo to proceed with the beast tide as planned. Before letting them leave the room, however, he reminds them to make sure that the Liu family's Beast Trade Guild absorbs the current batch of materials so they can arrange for the equipment workshop to release new gear at higher prices. In addition to that, Big Daddy also tells the Zhous to renovate the saunas, spas, hunks, and all supporting services, including the casinos, so that survivors from the Beast Tide can spend as much of their hard-earned money there as possible, all in the name of enjoying themselves, and the butler instantly accepts his wishes. Hours after the meeting by nightfall, Ye Chen meets with his sisters and tells them every single thing he's figured out about the nobles so far. For starters, the Beast Tide is orchestrated by noble clans like the Liu family, who use secret technology to open gates to other worlds, unleashing hordes of monsters to devour humans. Once the devouring is done, the bastards force the survivors to kill the other monsters, harvesting huge amounts of resources that are, in turn, funneled back into the market and ultimately offered as tribute to the top noble houses in the imperial capital. Having heard everything her brother just narrated, Yi Yi angrily calls out these noble bastards for being so wicked and acting like the commoners aren't human as well. Well, judging by what he's learned so far, Ye Chen tells his sisters that these assholes don't see commoners as humans, because to them, commoners like the 3 of them are nothing but beasts and livestock. At this point, Shuang suggests they tell everybody about this development, but Ye Chen knows people are very dumb and stupid, so he advises them not to rush out and tell anyone yet, even the commoners, because nobody will believe a word they're saying. With this, Yi Yi then asks little Ye Chen what he thinks they should do, and he advises that they begin pulling out the Liu family's claws one by taking out Zhou Qing and stopping the beast tide summoning from happening. That being said, he signals his sisters to get closer to him. Once they're close enough, he carefully whispers their next plan inaudibly into their ears and makes sure they got it all memorized. Following that, Yi Yi asks the little twerp if he thinks they can really beat someone as strong as Zhou Qing, but Ye Chen tells his sisters that since the goons plan to launch the beast tide by the end of the month, they still have 3 weeks to prepare for the challenge ahead. During that time, they need to do everything they can to increase their strength and drink as much milk as they can to stock up on reserve power. By this time, Shuang, who hasn't drunk Xingquan's wife's white magic melon juice, gets a little skeptical about drinking milk just to boost her powers. To prove just how effective his mother's melon juice really is, Ye Chen sticks his feeding bottle into Shuang's mouth and forces some milk down her gawking throat. Seconds later, Shuang pulls the teat out and tells her siblings that she already feels much stronger than ever, just by drinking milk. With that said, little Ye Chen jumps out of bed and leaves for his mother's yoga room to continue feeding from the source itself. Moments later, when he gets to his mother's room, the poor woman falls from her yoga pose and complains about the little rascal always draining the hell out of her curves and never getting full. After 3 more weeks of suckling the white melon juice, the little protagonist obtains a new reincarnation divine awakening skill called hyper-regeneration. This skill, though, absorbs 50% essence, helps Ye Chen instantly return to his current state inside any designated host. After having his divine awakening level stuck at C rank for so long with no breakthrough, Ye Chen, thinking he'd already hit the limit of his aptitude, studies the new skill he'd just got and easily understands it. With this skill, anytime he's about to die, he can quickly resurrect inside a designated host within range. Also, this time around, he doesn't need to spend months inside a womb and can return straight to his current state without any hassle. While Bro continues thinking of the various ways to use this new skill offensively, his sisters show up and inform him that everything's carefully set for their plan. Moments later, during their next meeting, Yi quietly tells her elder brother that she's already looked into that Zhou Qing dude. According to some of the maids she asked earlier, Zhou Qing is a powerful master of the system-type Divine Awakening, and is also one of the top graduates of his year from the Divine Awakening Academy. Just moments after his graduation, the scar-faced bastard reached early stage B rank. But now that he's matured a bit, he's the captain of the Liu family's local security force. Seconds later, when another maid heard the first one telling Yi all those things about Zhou, she quickly urges the poor girl to shut her trap and steer clear of that guy because not only does Big Daddy favor him, it so happens that the last time the bastard liked a girl and was gifted her affection, the lady vanished like she never existed, never to be found again. Having heard Yi's gossip about the guy, Shuang also tells her elder brother that she heard from the gardener not too long ago that Zhou Qing was gifted a high-grade life essence, which skyrocketed his progress in the Divine Awakening to get him to peak B rank, aka the highest a commoner Divine Awakened can ever reach. Following that, the gardener also told Shuang that Zhou Qing has a powerful Divine Awakening skill called the Divine Whip, which lets him soften his arms like whips. When he combines his Divine Whip skill with his system-type body enhancements, it's reported that the bastard can shatter even the heaviest metal armor without breaking a sweat. With all that said, Yi figures that this Qing guy must be way stronger than Kui Xiong and fears that he might be too much for the 3 of them to handle. Though concerned, little Ye Chen calmly analyzes his powers to be a beginner C rank, and as for Shuang, he reminds her of how she'd already reached peak D rank in just 3 weeks of milk feeding. With their current abilities, even Ye Chen knows that they wouldn't stand a chance in a direct battle with the tall bastard, and so he continues thinking of a good plan that won't get them killed. Just then, Shuang talks about the Divine Awakening skill she unlocked right after bathing him earlier, and ultimately reveals it, after so much pressure from the other two, to be hot-blooded overdrive. While Yi's pretty psyched by how cool and awesome the name is, Shuang tells them both that the skill lets her become 5 times stronger than her normal self for 30 seconds. Also, if she can upgrade her previous skill, Mighty Arm, using this overdrive skill, then one punch from her should send that Zhou Qing Nimrod to his home country. While Shuang and Yi play all over the room, Ye Chen, on the other hand, is left puzzled as he tries to figure out just how messed up this crazy system really is. Aside from the rigorous training, the fact that there's even a method for gaining skills by absorbing beast skill essences, something even the noble clans don't know, is just wild in itself. Moving on to address the elephant in the room, Ye Chen continues thinking of the reason why his sisters got such powerful skills from the sus system just by giving him a bath. Could it be that the system was designed by a PDF? Or it just loves seeing 2-inch baby PPs, Ye Chen wonders. In any case, little bro knows that all their skills combined still won't be enough to take the ugly bastard down, so if they're gonna fight him soon, they need to find a solution quickly. By this time, Yi Yi snaps him out of his thoughts by asking about the intel he claims to have gathered earlier, and little Ye Chen proudly tells them that he found out, from the meeting 3 weeks ago, that Zhou Qing will be active in the southern part of the city by 1 a.m. that night. Realizing that the area is around where her Red Pomegranate Divine Awakening group is based, Shuang gets really scared for her people there, and so she tries to run out of the house to notify the vice commander and the others, since the commander is dead. Soon after stopping her, little Ye Chen tells her not to rush because not only do they still have time to save everyone, but he also has a plan to take down Zhou Qing. Though shocked, the girl asks him to divulge his plan instantly, and Ye Chen whispers the entire thing inaudibly in their ears. With the stage set, he reminds his sisters that they still have time, so they must split up, make preparations, and reconvene by nightfall, so they can end the bastard, Zhou Qing, together. Later that night, the 3 siblings reconvene a few minutes after midnight, wearing spandex ninja clothes and face masks, and acting all suspicious. Upon making sure all their equipment is safe, Boss Baby gives the order to begin the ambush operation of the legendary fool, Zhou Qing. And so the operation begins. Soon after flying over half the city in just a few minutes, little Ye Chen and his siblings finally got a signal on the proposed southern side of the city, all thanks to Shuang's Red Pomegranate team members, and rushed towards the rooftop. When they land there, the kids quickly rush and hide near the corner in the bulkhead to avoid getting spotted by Zhou Qing, who's just a few meters away. Seconds later, Shuang asks her big brother if they should ambush the guy and take him that instant. But little Ye Chen warns her not to rush anything yet. Since they're all part of the suppression squad, timing and calmness are everything. That being said, the trio continues watching Zhou Qing for a few more seconds until the bastard activates the power in the fancy staff he's holding and sticks it in the ground. Just moments before the otherworldly portal opens, Ye Chen signals his sisters to attack him, and almost instantly, Shuang pops out of her hiding place, grabs a small concrete rock, and hurls it at the bastard. Given his sharp senses, Zhou Qing easily dodges the attack, halting the summoning process, and then screams out at the people hiding near him to reveal themselves. Before he knows it, Yi Yi steals his fancy staff and flies away with it. Unable to let her go, the hapless idiot activates his divine whip skill and extends his arms to grab and slam poor Yi Yi to the ground. Fortunately for the team, the moment he grabs Yi Yi by the foot, Yi Yi throws the fancy staff in Ye Chen's direction, and Zhou Qing, scared of what might happen if the staff gets in the wrong hands, drops Yi Yi and extends his hands toward the staff to grab it before Ye Chen does. Just then, in a split second, little Ye Chen zooms past the doofus with lightning speed, reminding him of just how slow and late he is, and ultimately strikes the guy with a lightning attack. Shortly afterward, Zhou Qing, who survives the lightning attack, calls them out for provoking him with their pathetic display, and then threatens and demands to know which faction they're from. That being said, the angry dude lunges at Ye Chen. Before getting to him, however, Ye Chen instructs his sisters to use Plan 2, and almost instantly, Yi Yi throws the fancy staff toward him. Upon catching the staff, Ye Chen rushes toward the far end of the building's rooftop and has Shuang block the bastard from getting to him. With no time to waste, Shuang activates hot-blooded overdrive and shoots an orange plasma beam at the enemy, but unfortunately, Zhou Qing stops her and pauses to ask who and how she got such crazy powers at such a young age. Just as Shuang's about to respond, however, the little protagonist finally sticks the staff into the ground and activates the otherworldly portal to the other realm. As the demons from the other realm begin seeping out of the crevices of the portal, Ye Chen screams at his sisters to retreat now that there's still time, and Shuang and Yi Yi do the needful. Before leaving the rooftop, however, little Ye Chen hurls a feeding bottle of his mother's white melon milk at the oblivious bastard, and Zhou Qing instinctively destroys the bottle, causing some of the essence milk to splash on his jacket. As he stares at his arm, irritated by the smell, a hellhound charges at him with murderous intent. But Zhou Qing easily beheads the crazy wolf, thanks the kids for helping him finish his mission, and then decides to take his leave. Unfortunately for him, before he leaves the roof, several magical arrows rain down from the sky, followed by a full horde of hellhounds, and Zhou Qing gets even more irritated by the effort, because he knows that the hellhounds charging at him aren't enough to stop him at all. much less trap him. To play the reverse game, he runs towards Ye Chen, with the hellhounds chasing after him, and attempts to get Ye Chen in the way so the hellhounds can eat him up. Realizing Zhou Qing's endgame, the girls get alerted and try to rush in to help. But as Zhou Qing leaps above Ye Chen, condemning him for using such a pathetic tactic and telling him to go to hell, Ye Chen warns his worried two sisters not to come any closer to him just yet, and just trust the process. By this time, Zhou Qing recognizes the voice of the kid leading the team and looks back to properly check the kid out. To his horror, he not only spots several arrows raining down on him, but he also notices the entire horde ignoring Ye Chen and coming for him alone. While the brainless oaf tries to figure out why the hellhounds are only chasing him, not knowing that it's all because of the essence, he takes his battle stance, blocks all the arrows raining down on him from the sky, and does his best to kill as many hellhounds as he can so he can escape. Ultimately, when the guy gets distracted for a fraction of a second, the hellhounds overwhelm the bastard and devour him alive. Soon after watching the hellhounds tear Scarface to pieces, little Ye Chen gets dizzy from the exhaustion, but his sisters quickly help him back up. Not too long after devouring the wuss, the hellhounds turn their sights on the three kids and charge at them to attack. Given the state of their big brother, Yi Yi and Shuang Shuang step forward to protect the three of them. Luckily, before they engage the hounds in battle, the vice captain and the rest of Shuang Shuang's team show up to help the kids, and Ye Chen, realizing that their mission is complete, instructs his sisters to head back to the mansion with him. The following day, when news of Zhou Qing's death gets to the butler and Big Daddy crashes out pretty badly, as he demands to know who the fuck would go against the Liu family just like that. Scared for his life, the pussy of butler abandons his son's death, and instead begs his master to forgive them for failing in their duties. Even still, Big Daddy continues crashing out and condemning Zhou Qing for dying like a normal human and ruining his selfish, pathetic plan to uplift the Liu clan to the highest-ranking noble family. Thankfully, after several attempts by the butler to calm him down, Big Daddy finally lets go of some testosterone and recalls just how loyal the Zhou family is to the Liu clan. As a reward for sticking with the Liu clan till the end, Big Daddy promises the butler that he'll uncover the mastermind behind this incident and avenge Qing's blood debt. Gladdened by the news, the grieving butler thanks his master and promises to investigate the incident with alacrity. A few seconds later, the little protagonist's pathetic mother, the lewd seductress, shows up in the meeting room to meet her father-in-law, and then complains about Ye Chen's recent incessant appetite. Apparently, the biatch made plans with her sisters to go shopping and waste money, but unfortunately, Ye Chen isn't ready to let her go just yet. Seeing this, Grandpa chuckles happily and tells his stupid daughter-in-law to be happy that her son is growing fast and eating more. Now that she's a mother, she needs to understand very quickly that the children come first and foremost, because his genius grandson is the hope of both their families. That being said, he moves on to yap about the families coming forward to arrange marriages with their genius son so they can grow their connections with the Liu family, and Ye Chen's mother gets a little shocked because she never envisaged that her child was already that popular. As it turns out, Ye Chen's reputation as a genius kid has already spread through the noble circles, to the point that even the mother's family has picked a candidate for him to marry in the future. Given the emotional complexity of the situation, Big Daddy leaves the whole betrothal planning thing in his mother's hands and hopes she understands how important getting herself involved in family affairs is. Moments later, when he returns to his room, Ye Chen calls his sisters and tells them everything about the Liu clan's betrothal plan for his future. Upon hearing the seriousness in their brother's voice, the sisters exchange sad glances, and Yi Yi asks him if he's going to marry the descendants of those bad guys and then abandon them to go have babies with them. Disgusted by the thought of doing such a thing, little Ye Chen holds his sisters and promises them that he's never going to abandon them, especially because he has a special kind of hate for spoiled brats like his piece-of-shit father. Satisfied with his promise, the girls smile at each other and decide to believe him. Several days later, the betrothal ceremony begins. However, as the marriage proposal teams from each family arrive from their various mansions and lands, the butler barks orders to every maid in the Liu family mansion to get every single element ready and in top quality for the celebration happening very soon. Somewhere along the line, Ye Chen's mother, who feeds Ye Chen as usual, asks Big Daddy why he's dragging her into the whole shtick when the housekeepers can do it. But Big Daddy tells her that since he doesn't trust his pathetic wuss of a son to manage family affairs, he has no choice but to let her in on the plan. Besides, this is a great opportunity for her to learn what it means to be the matriarch of a noble family, so she can't complain too much. Before long, a maid rushes into their waiting room to inform the butler of a very important, very secret message from a VIP in the imperial court. Once the butler gets the news, he informs Big Daddy about the development, and Big Daddy instantly walks to the secret room, together with Ye Chen's mom, to check the letter out. When they get to the secret room, the butler presents the sealed imperial letter from the second prince to Big Daddy, so he can open it. Soon after opening up and reading the letter's contents, Big Daddy passes the whole thing to his daughter-in-law, who holds it up to her face to read it, and Ye Chen pauses suckling on his mother's milkers to check the wax-sealed secret letter out. Upon checking its content, Ye Chen realizes that the second prince needed to tell Big Daddy about an internal struggle within the noble family ranks, as well as the emperor's plans to absolve the whole existence of the culprit noble family in question, the Ling family. Realizing that the internal struggle between noble houses has nothing to do with him, Ye Chen continues sucking on his mother's melons, and the poor woman nearly falls from his aggressive sucking. Soon enough, Big Daddy asks his airheaded daughter-in-law what she thinks about the letter's contents, and Ye Chen's mother begins by telling Big Daddy about the Ling family's past success in producing an S-rank master, flourishing for a while, before ultimately declining and regressing in valor and wealth. With such a tumultuous history of backstabbing and rising through the ranks, however, she gets a little confused and asks Big Daddy why he thinks the higher-ups are suddenly interested in them. In response to her question, Big Daddy blames the Ling family for taking the wrong side and trying to climb upward again. However, since the imperial family has decided to absolve the pathetic clan, the Liu family will eradicate the Ling quietly and overtake all their resources and industries in no time. That being said, he turns to his butler, Old Man Joe, and then urges him to prepare a trap for the Ling family before the ceremony is over, so that the family's marriage proposal party won't return to their clan, and the butler gets right down to work. A few minutes later, Ye Chen returns to his room and feeds Shuang Shuang some of his mother's essential white juice. Not too long after, Yi Yi barges into the room, scared and flustered, and calls her siblings for an emergency so they can talk about what she just saw. Before letting her speak, however, Ye Chen yanks the feeding bottle out from Shuang Shuang's mouth and sticks it in Yi Yi's mouth so she can get a sip and replenish herself. Seconds later, after taking around 3 big gulps, Yi Yi yanks the bottle out of her mouth and then tells both her siblings that she just saw their third sister, San San, in a carriage, working as a maid at the Ling family's marriage proposal party. Hearing this, Ye Chen's mood changes instantly due to everything he heard about his grandpa's plans for the family, and his sisters, noticing the change in his mood, ask him what the hell's wrong with him. Eventually, he tells them all about the Liu family's plan to wipe out the Ling family, and the sisters get the shock of their lives. With not a single second to waste, little Ye Chen instantly orders his sisters to go find San San so they can get her out of the family before it's too late. Unfortunately for them, just as they're about to leave the room to begin their search, Ye Chen's stupid mother shows up at the worst possible time, wearing a slit dress, picks up her son, and tells him she's not going to let him run off again. As Ye Chen uses his tiny raccoon fingers to wrestle his cute body off his mother's arms, the crazy woman sternly scolds the little devil for always running around like a mischievous little twerp, and then tells him that his grandpa, Big Daddy, told her to take him someplace safe so he doesn't fall in the hands of those who might try to take advantage of him. As the sisters watch their little elder brother get taken away by his nonchalant mom, Shuang Shuang and Yi Yi decide to think of a plan first before doing anything rash. Sadly, just as they're about to make their plans without their brother, another maid shows up and instructs both of them to go over to a spot and help Big Daddy with the party arrangements. Elsewhere, Big Daddy selects 3 families with the best ladies from the dozen families that came with their proposals, calls them to his meeting hall, and begins addressing them by thanking them for bringing the young ladies from their respective families there. Right after praising the maidens, the 3 families presented the proposal, which he calls beautiful and virtuous, all having horoscopes matching his grandsons. Big Daddy moves on to educate them on the third most important aspect they must consider when noble houses marry: ability. As such, to select his grandson's destined match from the three maidens, Big Daddy instructs the family representatives that the young ladies will have to partake in the infamous ability test to determine their strengths and rankings in the divine awakening system. Hearing this, young Ye Chen stops milking his mother's teat and gets curious about what his grandpa means by this ability test of a thing. A few moments after the briefing, the three competing families, the Ye family, the Nangong family, and the Ling family, all present their family seals before Big Daddy and await the beginning of the ability test. Right before that happens, Big Daddy tells his daughter-in-law about the Ling family's precious jewel being their eldest daughter, and then expresses his disappointment when he realizes that they sent a concubine's daughter there to marry their genius grandson. If he didn't need to divert the bastards' attention so they could plan their assassination, Big Daddy knows he'd never have allowed the Ling family to disgrace his clan like that. Around this same time, little Ye Chen gets seriously anxious about his three sisters' safety, and so he latches his teeth on his mommy's milkers, causing her to crash out right in the middle of everyone, and continues sucking as much milk as he can to calm his anxious self down. Luckily for him, just as his mother's about to yank his lips off her milkers, Big Daddy, who already spotted her crashing out, urges her to let him drink more so that his abnormal development rate will ultimately help him have latent divine awakening. Following that, he then tells his daughter-in-law that he'll have the young master tested by the divine appraisal envoys in the capital once he's older. So if the test results help his grandson rise to fame, then she, his mom, will get all the credit. Realizing just how true his words are, Ye Chen's mom calms down and lets her son continue drinking her milk. Not too long after, the butler shows up and informs his master that they've arranged the trap meant for the little twerp of the Ling family. If things go well, then the Ling girl will accidentally die during the ability test. As for the rest of the marriage proposal party, Butler Joe tells Big Daddy that they've arranged assassins to take them all out on their return trip to the Ling family mansion. While Big Daddy seems satisfied with the plan, Ye Chen, on the other hand, gets seriously worried about his third sister's well-being. Meanwhile, Shuang and Yi rush to complete all their tasks on time so they can finish early and focus on finding and rescuing San before the wolves get to her. While the girls make consistent efforts to finish on time, Big Daddy takes everyone to the Liu family's private arena for the ability test and then has his butler host the whole show. After the generic niceties, Butler Joe calls on the eldest young lady from the Nangong family to step forward for her test, and almost instantly, the beautiful and well-dressed lady waltzes out of the waiting room to get to the arena. According to Almighty Big Daddy's knowledge, the Nangong family's eldest granddaughter is both stunning and extremely gifted in combat. Now that he's seeing her for the first time, he can see just how true the whole rumor was. As for his stupid daughter-in-law, she scoffs at the girl for knowing how to fight, because she doesn't find it ladylike. Hearing this, Big Daddy tells his naive daughter-in-law that not all noble girls grow up like her. Because of her clan's unique physique, she's been treated like a destined treasure right from her young age because of her family's essence-producing bodily fluids. To Big Daddy, a daughter-in-law should be someone who shares burdens with her in the future, and he lets her know about his sentiment. Soon after calling the first family's candidate to the arena, the butler calls on the Ye family's second young miss to step forward. And just then, a chappy, lovely young lady strides gracefully into the arena, full of joy and happiness. When she stops near the first girl, she bows her head, introduces herself politely as the Ye family's candidate, Ye Xuan, and ends up impressing Ye Chen's mother, who sees her as a girl who can carry herself and win favor. Eventually, when the butler calls on the third candidate, the Ling family's third daughter, Ling Piao, to enter the arena, a razz young lady wearing a t-shirt, a pair of shorts, and sneakers briskly walks into the arena to join the other two without a care in the world, and this leaves both Big Daddy and Ye Chen's mommy milkers shocked to the bone. While poor Ye Chen tries to figure out how San ended up by this idiot's side, Xuan calls the Raz girl out for acting rudely in front of the adults, but the nonchalant young tomboy just ignores her and continues enjoying the show. A few hours later, the tomboy from earlier is seen inside Ye Chen's room. holding the little protagonist upside down and shaking him vigorously right in front of his Shuang Shuang, Yi Yi, and San San. When the strong rascal calls Ye Chen her future husband, urging him to take good care of her, Shuang Shuang and her sister freak out big time and order the useless piece of shit to put their brother down, while San San just chuckles nervously. I know you're confused because of the cut, but let's backtrack things to the moment after the three ladies were introduced to the spectators a few hours earlier, to understand what happened in the Liu family's private arena. Soon after the introduction, the Nangong family's candidate was made to face a D-rank blood-mane berserk ape to showcase her abilities to her future family. Just seconds after the ape was released, as it charges toward her, the meticulous young lady grips her sword like a seasoned warrior and slices the blood-mane ape cleanly in half. Thereafter she walks with elegance and bows to the head of the Liu family, Big Daddy. Impressed by her performance, Big Daddy tells his daughter-in-law that the little girl hasn't even awakened her divine awakening. Yet, she managed to defeat a D-rank beast with such ease, using only the Nangong family's sword techniques and her divine sword. If anything, the old man's sure that the lady's destined for greatness, regardless of whatever divine awakening she receives. By this time, little Ye Chen figures that the first girl must be the same age as he is, and then wonders just how intense her training must be for her to become this strong. If there's something he can't understand about the situation yet, it's how the girl feels after being forced to fight for the right to marry him, a stranger much younger than she is, all for her family's benefit. Shortly after the end of the first girl's impressive display, the host calls Ye Xuan to showcase her abilities. However, the moment the monster shows up, Ye Xuan uses her family's infamous brain manipulation technique on the blood-mane ape and forces it to break its skull by running into the hard wall at the edge of the arena. Shortly after seeing just how deadly someone like Ye Xuan can be, especially if she's allowed to roam freely, Ye Chen's mommy tells Big Daddy just how dangerous this is to their clan. In Xuan's defense, Big Daddy tells her that the Ye family has always shown real sincerity when dealing with the other nobles. Turns out that Xuan's brain manipulation technique is her clan's unique divine awakening and can be classified as a mental interference-type divine awakening talent. Hearing this, Ye Chen's mother asks him how he can allow her into the Liu clan and risk having her manipulate the entire household when she grows up. But then Big Daddy tells her that he's got that covered. As long as their divine awakening rank is higher than hers, then they won't be affected. Moving on from there, Big Daddy continues yapping about how skillful the Ye family is, as well as how in demand they are in the law enforcement industry. Upon hearing him explain and compare just how similar Ye's family talents are to Ye Chen's mother's family, Ye Chen thinks about how useful his mother's family clan must be to the top clans in the kingdom, given how convenient they are to have around, and then wonders why other top-tier noble families in the capital look down on abilities like theirs. Could it be that they have even more powerful secrets? He wonders. Not too long after, the host calls the third candidate, Ling Piao, to the stage, and the unhinged young lady proudly walks into the arena to showcase her skills. Seconds before her challenge begins, Xuan and Ye Chen's mother mocks her for thinking she amounts to anything, while Shuang Shang and Yi Yi stare at their other little sister, San San, hoping she does okay. As for little Ye Chen, who knows what's at stake, he does his best to figure out what kind of traps these noble bastards set for poor San San and Piao. Eventually, when Piao's monster shows up for the fight, young Ye Chen spots something off about her and eagerly watches how she destroys the monster. Right before Piao's battle begins, Ye Chen's bonny blue-looking mother quietly asks Big Daddy about his sneaky plan to kill the poor Piao with a stronger ape monster, and Big Daddy, confident in the plan his butler set for him, yaps something about eliminating a target without drawing gossip and whatnot, before ultimately telling his daughter-in-law to watch and learn how to turn a normal competition into a sudden accident. That being said, the ability test begins, and the ape monster charges at Piao with murderous intent. In the first few moments of the test, Piao stands her ground and confidently erects a strong defensive barrier to properly block the raging ape from turning her to mush. Soon after stopping the ape in its tracks with the shield, she forms a fist, infused with qi, and takes her stance as she prepares to deliver a strong punch at her enemy. Unfortunately, just as she's about to deliver the finishing blow, the blood-mane ape suddenly evolves into a mid-sea rank wild boar king, fully equipped with hides of steel, spikes on random parts of its body, as well as some pretty decent body armor. While the Lu family's higher-ups marvel at the beauty of the evolved monster, Ye Xuan, on the other hand, chuckles and mocks Piao Piao for being so unlucky to face a monster that jumped 2 whole ranks. As for Ye Chen and his siblings, they realize just how dire the situation is, but still know that their hands are tied. To properly cause a huge enough distraction, Ye Chen latches onto his mother's boobs, sucks some of her white melon juice, and vomits the whole thing on her dress. Naturally, Bonnie. Sorry. Ye Chen's mother freaks the hell out as she lifts his sorry arse and cusses him out for several minutes for spitting her disgusting milk on her beautiful dress. While she's at it, the scent of the melon juice essence on her dress gets to the evolved ape's nostrils and causes it to go even more berserk for Ye's mom. Just when Shuang and Yi Yi take their stances to defend their brother and his mother, Piao Piao tells them to let her handle the disgusting ape, and so they all leave her to do her thing. Not too long after, Piao Piao conjures thorny vines from both her palms, using an ultra-rare wood technique, wraps them all around the evolved ape's body, and squeezes the emperor tight enough to bring it to the brink of death. At this point, Ye Chen's mother recognizes the technique to be the wood-type divine awakening, and asks Big Daddy why she hasn't seen such a technique before. To respond to her question, Big Daddy tells her it's because Piao Piao has already awakened the Ling family's once famous wood-type special divine awakening skill, Ghost Blood Vine. Around that same time, Piao Piao, the first Nangong girl, as well as Xuan, all make their comments about the gross technique after finding out about the name from Big Daddy. Thereafter, Big Daddy educates them all that the technique can kill across ranks, because if the thorny vines enter through weak spots like the eyes, ears, or nostrils, then the target's blood, regardless of their rank, will slowly be drained off till they die. Explaining further, Big Daddy also adds that if one's unlucky enough to get tangled in such terrifying vines, then that person will die a slow death by exhaustion. During the glory days of the Ling family, it turns out they used this particular skill to hunt for beasts above their level, gaining an excess of high-quality resources. Shortly after finishing his yap, Big Daddy realizes that Piao Piao had already drained the entire monster down to its bones, literally. By this time, the butler quietly asks him if they need to make any further arrangements, but then Big Daddy changes his mind and instructs the butler to keep her alive so he can use her in his next plan. Apparently, the sly old man's new plan is to wipe the Ling family out, force Piao Piao to become his granddaughter-in-law, ensuring she has no maternal family left, and then claim her dowry like a fucking asshole. Anyway, now that we've properly narrated how the whole ability test sham went, let's get back to the current scene to hear San's story. Shortly after getting Piao Piao to drop their brother on the ground properly, Yi Yi asks San to explain how she ended up with something like Piao Piao. However, as San struggles to find words to describe her situation, Shuang smacks her head and scolds her for running off on her that night, causing her to search everywhere for her. While San continues stammering, Ye Chen stops all the unnecessary chit-chat and then asks Piao Piao if she knows that her family's about to be exterminated. To everyone's dismay, Piao Piao happily tells them that she knows. However, with no time to waste, she tells the siblings that she and San both have something very important to tell them all. Upon getting their full attention, Piao Piao starts the conversation by asking Ye Chen, Yi Yi, and Shuang if they've already awakened their systems. When they all nod in approval, Piao Piao asks them again if they suddenly gained strange powers and skills during the awakening, and they all nod in approval a second time. Moving on to her third question, Piao Piao asks them yet again if they believe that miracles, like the one that happened to them, can happen out of nowhere. This time around, before they respond to her question, she pulls San closer to her side and tells the other three that behind every so-called miracle, someone has paid a terrible price. Noticing the sullen look on San's face, Ye Chen gets very worried as he demands to know what happened to their little sister. Piao Piao then tells him that she's just a foolish girl who lost her most beloved brother and sister and accidentally discovered that her divine awakening was plunder. a very powerful, very dangerous skill that helps her steal others' divine awakening powers and skills. With such a dangerous power, San San became a terrifying villain, feared even by the capital circle's noble houses, as the world increasingly became chaotic. Unfortunately, in the end, when San San found a way to return to the past, she gave up all her power like an idiot, returned to this timeline they're all in, and worked day and night, all just to save the very people she loved the most. Upon hearing this out-of-pocket backstory, Ye Chen pretends to understand whatever the freak Piao Piao's talking about, and then asks San San if she'd use the rebirth skill on herself. When San San reverts to her normal, shy self, Piao Piao teases her for acting like that, and then tells the other three that their little sister became a ruthless demon called the Butcher of the Noble Houses over 30 years into the last timeline. About the system interface the three of them currently possess, Piao Piao calls it a mental projection created from a psychic-type divine awakening. In other words, every time they open their system interface, it drains San San's immense mental power and puts a strain on her abilities. As for the divine awakening abilities given to Shuang Shuang and Yi Yi, Piao Piao narrates that those were a result of near-death research breakthroughs from San San's past life, aka divine awakening activation. At this point, Ye Chen asks Piao Piao about his own lightning abilities, and she then lets him know that San San sacrificed the most to save him. Apparently, since she returned with limited power from giving the others powers, she quickly realized just how dangerous his situation was. So, she sought out the rarest, most unique rule-type divine awakening for him by infiltrating the capital circle alone and assassinating the head of one of the top 10 noble clans, the Mu family. Touched by San San's sacrifice, Ye Chen and the other two rushed to hug her, with tears on their faces. But very soon, San San also tears up and cries over how much she missed them.